Camilla's worst nightmare just came true. Princess Catherine uncovered the unthinkable. Two of Diana's most iconic heirlooms, worth over £600,000, vanished without a trace. The culprit? Camilla herself. Security logs. A public confrontation. Caught red-handed after her daughter wore Diana's earrings at a royal luncheon. William didn't hesitate. Camilla was thrown out of Kensington Palace. Not quietly, not symbolically, completely. Because this wasn't just theft. It was a betrayal of Diana and Charlotte's future. The silent heist begins. It was early morning at Kensington Palace, June 18, 2025, when Catherine noticed something wasn't right. She was reviewing heirloom entries, part of her routine to prepare a selection of historic pieces for a private family exhibit in Charlotte's name. But two entries stood out. Diana's pearl choker, gifted by the Spencer family for her 18th birthday in 1981, and the Qatar pearl earrings, a rare diplomatic gift from 1986, were no longer in their assigned case. The vault log showed no official withdrawal. The choker was one of Diana's earliest treasures, last catalogued in March 2023 after a conservation assessment. The earrings, valued at over £500,000, were scheduled to be cleaned ahead of Charlotte's 18th birthday in 2043. Yet now, both pieces were missing. Catherine didn't panic. She alerted Windsor's private staff by 7:45 a.m., instructing them to conduct a silent search across 3 properties: Kensington, Windsor Castle, and the off-site storage in Norfolk. By 10 a.m., the search had turned up nothing. 2 safes, both fingerprint-coded and reviewed quarterly, showed no tampering. Cameras showed no forced entry. There were no sign-outs, no staff log entries, no visual record since May 2, 2025. Catherine, already suspicious, kept quiet. She knew this wasn't a technical error. It was deliberate. Someone had removed the jewels. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing and when to strike. William acted fast. By 12:30 p.m., he ordered an emergency lockdown on all remaining heirlooms. The 2022 Royal Audit Protocol was reactivated, pulling records of every piece Diana ever wore. Vault keys were reassigned. "Trust is now a security risk," he said privately, and behind closed doors, both he and Catherine began to suspect what they dared not say aloud. That this wasn't just a breach of trust, it was a direct attack on Charlotte's legacy. While public life at the palace continued as usual, photo calls, charity briefings, and red carpet obligations, behind the scenes, a royal crisis had begun. The disappearance wasn't random. These were Diana's pieces, items never meant to be touched until Charlotte came of age. With the vault sealed and staff silenced, only 2 questions remained. Who took them, and why? The answer wouldn't come through quiet whispers. It would come in pearls, worn boldly in daylight by someone who never should have had them. Diana's jewels. The missing choker wasn't just an accessory. It was one of the first things Diana ever received as a royal. On her 18th birthday in July 1981, the Spencer family handed her the pearl choker as a signal of the dynasty she was about to marry into. It featured 4 rows of freshwater pearls, a central diamond clasp, and had been appraised at £100,000 in 1998, following her passing. Diana wore it on her honeymoon cruise through the Mediterranean, just days after her wedding. The earrings were even rarer. During a state visit to Qatar in 1986, Diana was presented with a set of 3-tiered pearl drops by the Emir himself, a gift traditionally reserved for foreign queens. She wore them repeatedly during 1986 and 1987, notably while pregnant with William. One photo in particular, taken on October 14, 1986, at a London gala, became iconic. It captured her glowing, with the earrings reflecting soft chandelier light and a proud hand resting on her bump. By 2005, the pieces were secured inside the Windsor Archive per Queen Elizabeth II's orders. They remained untouched for nearly 2 decades until 2023, when Catherine requested them for preservation, never display. It had been decided that both the choker and earrings would be given to Princess Charlotte upon her 18th birthday in 2043. This was not a fashion choice. It was a statement that Diana's grace, strength, and femininity would live on through her granddaughter. That's what made the theft feel so personal. The jewels represented more than status. They symbolized Diana's journey from uncertain teenager to global icon, from shy princess to fierce mother. Their removal wasn't just a missing entry on a vault ledger. It was the rewriting of legacy. Whoever took them wasn't stealing for style or value. They were attempting to reroute Diana's royal line, cutting out the next rightful heir, Charlotte. As Catherine processed the full weight of what had been taken, her fury stayed hidden behind royal poise. The press didn't know. The staff didn't speak. But there was one clue no one could hide, one that would turn suspicion into confrontation. Because soon, in the heart of Buckingham Palace, someone would walk in wearing Diana's memory on their ears, and Catherine would see everything. A luncheon turns into a confrontation. On June 20th, 2025, during a midday luncheon at Buckingham Palace, Catherine arrived precisely at 12:15 p.m. The occasion was informal, a gathering of family, senior aides, and close royals. That's when she saw Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter, enter the room wearing earrings that made Catherine's blood run cold. 3 pearls, identical length, matching drop. It took all of 2 seconds to recognize them. They were Diana's earrings, the ones missing from the vault. At first, Catherine said nothing. She watched, waited. At 12:23 p.m., she quietly leaned toward her assistant and requested a visual match from the jewelry archives. The comparison came back within minutes, confirmed. Design from 1986, Emir of Qatar. Same diamond threading, no question. A hush began to settle over the room. Catherine stood, locked eyes with Laura, and for the first time confronted her in full view of over 30 guests. "What are you wearing?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. Laura stammered, "A gift from Mother." Camilla, sitting 2 seats away, went pale. William arrived minutes later, having been informed through a private security message. Catherine didn't back down. She turned to Camilla and said clearly, "Those belong to Charlotte." Every conversation in the room stopped. William ordered a palace gemologist on site by 1 p.m. In a private study, the earrings were examined under magnification. Serial coding, clasp structure, pearl alignment, all matched. "These are the originals," the gemologist confirmed. It was official. The long-lost earrings hadn't disappeared. They had been stolen and worn boldly inside the Queen's own residence. For Catherine, this was no longer a suspicion. It was war. The confrontation at the luncheon turned whispers into headlines. Within hours, staff were speaking in coded tones, aides were checking inventories, and William's private office issued strict silence orders. But the silence wouldn't last long. Because as Camilla and Laura tried to cover their tracks, they triggered a chain reaction that no amount of PR could fix. What came next would not only expose the truth, but throw open the gates to a scandal 30 years in the making. Camilla and Laura's cover story crumbles. By June 21, 2025, the palace was in quiet chaos. Laura Lopes, visibly rattled after the luncheon, offered a vague story to royal aides. She claimed the pearl earrings were a gift from her mother, Camilla, something purchased at a private auction years ago. No receipt, no documentation. When pressed, she couldn't recall the auction house's name. Her tone shifted from casual to cornered. The earrings, allegedly bought in 2012, had somehow resurfaced 13 years later, without a single official record. That excuse unraveled fast. The Royal Collection team cross-referenced all auction acquisitions between 2010 and 2020, including public and private records from Sotheby's, Bonhams, and Phillips. Nothing matched. Meanwhile, palace security logs uncovered a key detail. On April 9, 2025, Camilla entered the secure jewelry wing that housed Catherine's vault. No staff accompanied her. No clearance was granted. She claimed it was heritage research for an upcoming tour, but there were no tours scheduled for that quarter. William called a private meeting that evening with his top advisors and 2 legal consultants. When informed of Camilla's story, he reportedly stood in silence before saying, "That's not an error. That's theft." He rejected suggestions from Charles's aides to settle the matter privately. "No, this doesn't disappear behind drapes," he told one advisor. Catherine, calm but firm, agreed. "If we don't act, it sends a message that Diana's memory is disposable." Less than 48 hours later, the story leaked. On June 23rd, The Times published a front-page headline, "Queen's family linked to missing Diana jewels." Anonymous palace sources confirmed the items were intended for Princess Charlotte. Within hours, the press frenzy ignited. Public reaction was immediate and brutal. Royal social media accounts were flooded. One comment summed it up. "You didn't just steal earrings, you stole from Diana's granddaughter." The palace could no longer hide behind polished portraits and protocol. Camilla's story had collapsed, and now the world was watching. But while public anger surged outside the gates, inside the royal circle, William was preparing something far more devastating. He wouldn't just remove Camilla from the equation. He would strip her of the one thing she still clung to: royal privilege. The monarchy wasn't about titles anymore. It was about trust, and Camilla had broken it. Camilla's royal privilege stripped. By June 24, 2025, William made his decision official. In a confidential royal directive submitted through Kensington's Internal Affairs Office, he revoked Camilla's access to all heirloom archives and ceremonial planning. The document, signed just after 3:00 p.m., confirmed her removal from any future role involving Diana's personal collection, royal jewelry rotation, or historical wardrobe curation. "You don't get to rewrite Diana's legacy," he said, according to a senior aide. "Not through PR, and definitely not through theft." Palace staff were informed that Camilla was no longer welcome in Kensington's private residences. Though still technically the Queen Consort, her functional influence was wiped out in 24 hours. She would no longer attend Wales-led events. Her security clearance was downgraded. And for the first time since 2005, she was absent from the Royal Council's Summer Heirloom Strategy Session, usually held annually in Sandringham. The symbolic fallout was even heavier. Aides describe her exit as quiet but absolute. No press release, no apology, no explanation. But everyone inside knew. One insider said, "She wasn't thrown out physically, but she was thrown out completely. She no longer walks where Diana walked." Catherine, meanwhile, remained silent. She issued no statement. Instead, she focused on Charlotte's upcoming summer schedule: school events, charity appearances, and archival visits. Life moved on, but the hierarchy had shifted. The media reaction was swift. The Telegraph called it an internal exile. The Guardian described it as a correction of royal narrative. Social media went further. Memes of Camilla leaving the palace gates with suitcase emojis flooded timelines. Hashtags like #thrown-out and #NotYourCrown trended within hours. For the public, it wasn't just satisfying, it was symbolic justice. The monarchy hadn't just responded, it had chosen a side. But for Catherine and William, this wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. The crown wasn't simply an institution, it was a memory keeper. And when someone tried to rewrite those memories, they had to act. Yet what truly shocked the palace wasn't Camilla's behavior. It was the deeper pattern hiding behind it. Because once the silence broke, the whispers returned. Whispers from 1993, from 1996, from scandals long buried. The past was coming back, and this time it had teeth. The theft that crossed a sacred line. For the royal family, jewelry isn't about glamour, it's storytelling through diamonds. Diana's pearl choker, gifted in 1981, marked the beginning of her royal journey. The Qatar earrings, received in 1986, marked the rise of her global image. Catherine had always treated them as sacred. When they disappeared, it wasn't just a loss of property. It was the betrayal of a mother's memory, one destined to live through Princess Charlotte. That's why Camilla's act crossed a line no apology could fix. Behind closed doors, more documents surfaced. In 2022, Queen Elizabeth II had written instructions clarifying that all of Diana's heirlooms were to remain with the Wales bloodline. That is, Catherine, William, and Charlotte. The intention was clear. Even in her final days, the Queen had drawn the line. Camilla's move didn't just violate vault protocol, it violated Elizabeth's dying wishes. "There's no way she didn't know," one aide whispered. "She just didn't care." The deeper insult wasn't just the theft, it was who Camilla tried to give the jewels to. Laura Lopes, a private citizen, not a working royal. By wearing those earrings, she inserted herself into a history she had no part in. To the public, it felt like watching a stranger walk into Diana's legacy and try it on like a costume. The symbolism hit hard, especially to those who remembered 1997 and the outpouring of grief that followed Diana's death. Now, that grief was reignited. Commentators called it an emotional robbery. Over 100,000 tweets flooded in within 24 hours. Newspapers reprinted photos of Diana in her pearl choker beside images of Laura wearing the earrings. The contrast was jarring. One headline said it all. "From Diana to Charlotte, interrupted." But it wouldn't stay that way for long, because Catherine was ready to lock that legacy down, for good. With Camilla exiled and the vault resecured, the public looked to Catherine, not for vengeance, but for reassurance. Would she defend what remained? Would she shield Charlotte's legacy from further damage? The answer came not in words, but in quiet, decisive action. Because Catherine didn't just inherit Diana's jewels, she inherited her fire. And now she was ready to use it. Camilla's dark past comes back to haunt her. As Camilla retreated from public view in late June 2025, something darker surfaced. The scandal reignited long-dormant memories, the ones she had spent over 20 years trying to bury. Headlines didn't just talk about stolen earrings, they reminded the world of what came before: the affair with Prince Charles during Diana's marriage, the whispered phone calls, and most infamously, the 1993 Tampon Gate tapes. It was all back, And this time, there was no spin strong enough to stop it. Camilla's public image had always been fragile. After marrying Charles in 2005, she spent years crafting a new role, one of quiet support, elegant duty, soft diplomacy. But palace insiders now admit that her climb was aided by media allies and a PR machine that quietly buried inconvenient truths. With the heirloom scandal exploding online, commentators began pulling old receipts. One journalist from The Times tweeted, "She wasn't trusted then, she's not trusted now." Even more damaging were whispers from inside the palace walls. Senior aides, once loyal, began to speak anonymously. One claimed Camilla had previously removed items from Windsor storage in 2017, 2019, and 2021, citing Heritage Review as her reason. None of those items were documented as missing, but now every past access raised questions. This wasn't a one-time error, the aide said. It was a pattern, a quiet entitlement. Against this storm, Catherine stood untouched. She had never asked for jewels, never taken credit, never made herself the center. But now, the contrast between the two women was undeniable. Camilla's legacy seemed built on acquisition, Catherine's on service, and as public favor shifted, the choice became clear. Diana had once lost her crown to scandal. Now, her memory was reclaiming it through her daughter-in-law. The press didn't let go, and the palace couldn't bury it. Camilla's past had returned, and this time, it wouldn't be silenced. But as the world debated her fall from grace, Catherine stayed silent. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she was already preparing her next move. What was stolen had been exposed. What remained would now be protected, not just by force, but by something far stronger: legacy. Catherine stands her ground with dignity. On July 1st, 2025, Catherine made her move. In a quiet, unpublicized ceremony deep within Kensington Palace, she personally oversaw the relocking of Diana's remaining heirlooms. The vault, updated with biometric security and a dual-access system, now responded to only two individuals, Catherine and Charlotte's appointed steward. No one else, not even William, held direct access. The message was clear. Diana's legacy was no longer shared. It was safeguarded, and it was sealed. She didn't speak to the media. There were no photos. Just a simple gesture. A handwritten note placed inside the vault, dated July 1st, reading only, "For Charlotte. Love, Mummy." Palace staff present that day described the mood as solemn and focused. She wasn't angry. She wasn't theatrical. She was simply resolved, one security official said. That's when we all understood. This wasn't just about jewels. It was about protection. In the days that followed, staff began to shift. Aides from Clarence House requested reassignment to Kensington. Internal memos showed increasing loyalty to the Wales household. For the first time since Queen Elizabeth's death in 2022, there was a clear center of moral authority in the royal family. And it wasn't Charles. It wasn't Camilla. It was Catherine. Public opinion mirrored the change. Polling from YouGov on July 3rd showed a surge. Catherine held an 82% approval rating, the highest since Kate and William's 2011 wedding. Camilla, meanwhile, had dropped below 29%, a record low since 2010. The people had spoken, and they believed the crown's future belonged to Diana's spiritual heir, not her replacement. While Catherine strengthened the family's legacy through quiet control, William took a bolder path. No longer content to react, he began issuing orders that would redraw royal lines of power. What Camilla had broken could not be ignored. And what Charles refused to confront, William would dismantle himself, piece by piece. Because now it wasn't just about jewels. It was about restoring the name Diana, one locked door at a time. William moves to protect legacy. By July 4th, 2025, William made his position impossible to ignore. In a sweeping internal directive, he ordered a complete halt to any heirloom access requests from non-Wales family members. Camilla and her immediate circle, Laura Lopez included, were formally blacklisted from jewelry and wardrobe archives, with permanent notation added to the Royal Heirloom Registry. For the first time, Diana's name, her belongings, and her legacy were written into policy. Official. Protected. At a private meeting inside Clarence House, William confronted Charles directly. Sources report, he said, "If you won't defend her legacy, I will." Charles, stunned, gave no public response. Behind palace walls, aides described the king as visibly shaken and increasingly isolated. In the weeks following, he cancelled 2 joint appearances with Camilla, including one in Gloucestershire. Rumors began to swirl. Had the crown fractured from within? Meanwhile, Kensington Palace launched an internal heirloom task force. 7 staff members were reassigned to monitor rotation, preservation, and digital tracking of every item previously worn by Diana. The move was quiet, but unprecedented. "He's not just protecting Charlotte," one royal archivist said. "He's refortifying history and locking the doors Diana never could." The public saw what was happening and responded. Letters poured in from across the Commonwealth. Thousands, many addressed to Charlotte. One from an 82-year-old woman in Canada read, "Diana would be proud of your mummy." Hashtags surged again. Protect Charlotte, Diana forever, and the true legacy. The monarchy was evolving, and the people were watching. The vault was locked. The lines were drawn, and the family was split in 2. Charles and Camilla remained technically in power, but hearts had moved elsewhere. Because in the story of Diana's memory, the people had made their choice. And that choice was now etched not in gold, but in public trust. What came next wasn't just judgment. It was coronation of a queen who hadn't yet worn the crown, but had already claimed it. Public judgment. By July 7th, 2025, the public had made up its mind. It wasn't just about who stole what or who lied to whom. It was about who stood for something and who tried to destroy it. Online, the hashtags didn't stop. Justice for Diana trended in 81 countries. Hashtag Charlotte deserves better reached over 1 million mentions in 48 hours. Even mainstream broadcasters echoed the sentiment. BBC Newsnight aired a full segment titled "Legacy Reclaimed: The Catherine Effect." Camilla, now absent from all official engagements, became a cautionary tale. Once a queen consort, now a symbolic exile. Her image, so carefully rebuilt since 2005, collapsed under the weight of 3 pearls. Commentators across Europe called it the swiftest collapse of royal credibility in modern memory. In one viral clip, a journalist asked, "Can you lose a crown you were never meant to wear?" Meanwhile, Catherine and Charlotte were seen out together at a children's charity event in Oxford. No jewels, no spectacle, just calm smiles. But in the public's eyes, the image said everything. Diana's legacy wasn't buried. It was walking beside her granddaughter, alive, protected, and finally in the right hands. The monarchy didn't issue a statement. It didn't need to, because in the end, Camilla wasn't just caught. She was rejected by history. And Catherine, she didn't need to take a title, because she had already been crowned by the people. She tried to steal history and lost her place in it. Camilla's influence? Gone. Her reputation? Shattered. The crown didn't defend her. The people didn't forgive her. Meanwhile, Catherine stood calm, guarding Diana's legacy, shielding Charlotte's future. No drama, no retaliation, just quiet strength. Now, the world sees who truly carries Diana's spirit. And Camilla? She wasn't just caught. She was erased by the truth, by the people, and by the real Queen-in-Waiting.